Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of MOJO Rising, How to Make Cancer Suck Less. And this week, we're going to talk to you about something that's really exciting because this is something everyone needs to know. It is the foundational protocol. So what are the things that it doesn't really matter what treatment you're on or what sickness you're dealing with or what's happening? These are things that we all kind of need to have a steady supply of in our body. And many of you that I've spoken with have said, well, aren't I eating a good diet, or I'm trying this or I'm trying that? And the reality is due to the mass industrialization of our food sources, the quality of the food we're getting every day has gone down. So it's more and more important to get your food supplemented with these sorts of tools that we're about to talk about today. So I'd like to take a quick minute and introduce you to Oscar Sierra. So Oscar, will you share with our listeners that maybe haven't listened to us before a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm an herbalist. That's the one word short answer. I function largely as a naturopath, although I did not go to naturopathic medicine school, but I've gone to the trainings and conferences with enough of those to where that's kind of what my practice looks like. So it's not exclusive. My training is not exclusive around botanical medicine. It's also around functional medicine, looking at lab markers, looking at nutraceuticals like, vitamins and nutrients, and not just how they prevent scurvy, but how they can, in a therapeutic dosage, stave off some disease or prevent, mitigate some other pathology or side effect from a drug or a common cold or whatever. So we're going to be talking about not just kind of how to not get scurvy or, kwashiorkor. We're going to be talking about how to get ahead, not just how to not get behind.
So, and that's really important when you think about this, because when you feel better and your body's operating better, it can draw its attention towards healing and not towards reducing inflammation or dealing with this or doing with that. And we want all of our body, all of our available inflammatory cells or all of our available markers to be focused specifically on reducing the cancer burden in our body. So that's really kind of the other joy of this, of helping to create some core health so your body can actually be focused on killing cancer. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, Oscar, why does everyone not do this already?
There's no good reason why they're not already doing it. I mean, people on their cancer journey should all be doing this, but frankly, a lot of people that just live in a city exposed to all the petrochemical, diesel fumes and glyphosate, Roundup, pesticides, herbicides, plastics in your food, and Tupperware, cosmetics, and everything else ought to be doing this simply because they don't live in Timbuktu and Shangri-La, where it's super organic soil and no pesticides, herbicides, environmental toxicants. If you live there, then you probably wouldn't need these things, but no one does. So the reality is that these things are foundational for, especially in a cancer journey, because of the onslaught of side effects and damage from conventional medicine, which can be pretty cool, but no one's going to pretend that that chemo is going to make you jump faster or run faster, jump higher.
Why, in your opinion, does a doctor not recommend a foundational protocol along with chemotherapy today?
Because they're not trained in it, and they probably would get in trouble from their superior officers up the chain of command that they're doing something even remotely outside of the standard of care, which is all about selling procedures and selling drugs.
Okay, so that's a really important factor for our listeners. We just want to break down for everyone. The standard of care that your oncologist has is to reduce the cancer burden in your blood. That's to reduce the number of cancer cells that are actively floating, across your body. It is not so you can live a long and healthy life long after cancer. And that's really why it's so important for you to advocate for yourself, build your own strategy, and make sure you're looking at this in a holistic manner. So just want to reinforce, your doctor's not recommending this because it's not what they learned in medical school. And you've heard me talk about this before, but that is because the Flexner Report, which was published in 1909, went through and said if medical schools taught anything but pharmaceutical laboratory science, they'd lose their funding. So your doctor didn't learn about this because of the Flexner Report, which was launched in 1909, which was paid for by the Carnegies and the Rockefellers. So it's really important to understand that your doctor doesn't know this because of capitalism. It's not because it doesn't work. It's not because it hasn't been deployed across the world, because these are the resources that are being deployed in other countries. Okay,
because of oligarchism, really.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about what is the foundational protocol. So these are
Okay.
think tools and resources that you would use to build your body. So what specifically would you recommend, Oscar?
All right, so we talked about the why, so let's talk about the what. So, in order of importance, botanical treasures and inflammaway, which I'm holding here, are typically number one and two, and sometimes one is number one, the other sometimes it's the other one. It kind of depends on the scenario, depending on where someone's baseline inflammatory levels are. So if someone has an inflammation of somewhere above, 5, I might put inflammaway at the number one on the importance list and at a higher dosage, especially acutely. And if someone already has a pretty good handle on inflammation, their diet and lifestyle, then I might put botanical treasures as number one. But either way, these are both pretty darn important and they cover a lot of bases. They cover a lot of bases because herbs cover a lot of bases. So one herb covers lots of different bases. It's called a pleiotropic effect. For example, turmeric hits, but the main ingredient of botanical treasures hits, cyclooxygenase 5, which is an inflammatory pathway that Celebrex hits, lipoxygenase 5, which is another inflammatory pathway, and prostaglandins, and all these different avenues of inflammation. But that's just one herb. Now, there's like a bunch of different herbs in here in synergy. So you don't just eat carrots for dinner. You eat, roasted carrots with some, parsnips, with some, wild caught fish and a little butter and some herbs and seasonings, and some roasted red potatoes with the skin on them, and you get a variety of things. So, herbs work in concert, just like meal works in concert. So these are beautifully in concert, specifically to address the issues and pathways that cancer cells use to metastasize, use to communicate with one another, used to create blood vessels and angiogenesis, used to evade immune detection. So they're not just random herbs that are good for you. They are specifically botanicals and, things like resveratrol, which is from a plant, but, really and truly a refined substance that is more in the lines of a nutraceutical. But these are, thoughtfully and deliberately designed to cover the pathways that cancer patients need covered.
Okay, so time out. Let's just make sure that everyone understands what he just said. I believed before I had cancer that X plus Y equals Z. If you had cancer, you took chemotherapy and you would be cancer-free. What I didn't understand is there were a whole lot of different ways besides that one pathway of chemotherapy that you could use to either treat or heal cancer. So it's important to understand that while you're doing one thing, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be cutting off all the other pathways you can to increase your likelihood of success. So that's something that's a little different from what you learn outside of your traditional standard of care operation. So there are multiple pathways to heal cancer. You want to be addressing all these pathways. Okay, so Oscar, you mentioned, sorry, did you have something to say on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of equate, like Atlanta, right? Like there's a bunch of different ways to get to Atlanta. You can come down 75, you can go across 20, you can, come down 400, you can take Highway 78, from Athens and Stone Mountain, and if one, if the Highway 41 where the big chicken is blocked, you can take 75. And if 75 is blocked, you can take 41. And so these, different people's cancers use different roadways preferentially. And when you put all of these herbs together, it kind of covers a little bit of all of them. So it's going to inhibit cancer coming in on Highway 20, Highway 78, 285, 400, 85, Highway 41. So does it do it by completely blocking 75? No, it just puts some really annoying speed bumps along the way because you don't necessarily want to block all traffic. You just really want to make it hard for the cancer cells to come into your city. And so that's kind of the analogy I like to give is when you put a bunch of these all in the same pill, you're covering a lot of different pathways.
Okay. So that was Inflameaway and Botanical Treasures. And both of those help to reduce inflammation. Is that correct?
Both of those help to reduce inflammation.
Why
They
is it
help.
important to reduce inflammation?
So the unique, there's many different types of cancers. There's many different geographies of cancer, and there's many different people who have cancer. But all solid cancers, be it breast or prostate or lung, all thrive in a inflammatory microenvironment. That is to say that the juices of inflammation, and just like ice cream has many flavors, inflammation has different flavors. We mentioned COX-2 and LOX-5 and different prostaglandins. Those are different flavors of inflammation. So, most cancers out there are solid tumors, and therefore they're thriving because of one or more of these flavors. You may not know which one, but sight unseen, guess what? This is going to cover it at least a little bit. Now, if you know exactly which flavor, you can go more hardcore on Highway 75, or that it loves coming in from Athens on Highway 78, you can really hunker down on that pathway. But sight unseen, it's a safe bet to cover a little bit of all of them, because guess what? It's not going to hurt. So yes, inflammation is going to be a critical part of any cancer growing. And so you target inflammation and all the different flavors that it entails.
Okay, so that's taken away one of the pathways that we know helps create a hospitable environment for cancer. What are some of the other parts of the foundational protocol?
Okay, so for example, vitamin D is another really important, and this is a D, A, and K. So vitamin D and K synergize together. So does vitamin A. So it's a little unsafe to take high dose vitamin D without the K, because it can raise your serum calcium. You don't want your calcium in your arteries. You want it, in your bones. So the vitamin K helps keep the calcium in the right place. Vitamin K on its own merit has some interesting anti-cancer actions, and so does vitamin D. For example, P53 is a gene that is called the guardian of the genome, that many people in cancers have a P53 mutation, which basically helps it evade immune detection. So it helps not get weeded out in quality control when the immune system senses an aberrant cell that shouldn't be in circulation making copies of itself. So this P53 thing, there's no drug that upregulates P53, by the way. There is some things like vitamin D that do, so it helps put these quality control checks back into play so that your immune system can start detecting these weirdo cells that don't need to be there, and it's not asleep at the wheel at the factory with quality control. So that's one of many reasons. I mean, apart from just not getting colds and flus, which suck when you don't have cancer, but really suck if you do have cancer. So
sure.
That covers some bases there.
And so that's vitamin D and vitamin K. And I think it's really important to recognize what Oscar just said. The way that these have been designed are really to optimize how your body can receive the medicine. So they put them in tandem. So that makes it a little bit easier for your body to actually internalize that and get the full nutritional value from them.
Yeah, so you don't have to buy a vitamin D and then separately a vitamin K and then separately a vitamin A. Like, peanut butter is nice, jelly is nice, but peanut butter and jelly together is like, way better. And that's the way nature works. It works better together than apart. And if you know the right recipes that, like peanut butter and jelly, that's a simple recipe. Vitamin D, A, and K is another really simple recipe that works better in synergy than it does alone.
Okay, great. What else is part of the foundational protocol?
Part of it, magnesium. Because, again, even if you don't have cancer, most people are magnesium deficient simply because the soil sucks. The magnesium washed away into the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico, the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. So our broccoli, assuming you're eating it, no longer has magnesium that it did before. And our need, so the supply went down and the demand went up. Demand went up because toxins, not even chemotherapy, but definitely chemotherapy, but other toxins like, breathing in funky fumes and heavy metals, which are, all kinds of places, increase your demand for magnesium. And so if your supply was already lower and your demand was even higher, like Russ Jaffe, MD, PhD, our friend, says that we're talking now a 4-fold difference and need for magnesium. And that's not even including, platinum drugs, which lower it even more. So this is a pretty well-tolerated magnesium that is not likely to give someone the runs, especially if they take a little bit twice a day rather than a lot all at once. So, energy level, let's say, one of the big suck things with cancer and radiation or surgery or chemotherapy, kind of doesn't really matter which one it is. The number one side effect is fatigue. And, magnesium does 300 things. But if I was to maybe just say the one that's most important with cancer cases is just it helps keep your energy level from tanking.
Okay, great. That was actually going to be my question. So that's perfect because you mentioned two things. One, it helps with toxins, and then of course it helps with energy levels. So really exciting.
Yeah, also a lot of these are constipating, or if someone's in pain and they're taking opioids, morphine or fentanyl patch or something like that, it's likely going to cause constipation. And good, not excessive, but good twice a day dosings of magnesium can help kind of prevent that constipation
Okay, great.
safely. No problem before, during, and after chemo. No problem before, during, and after opioids. No problem. So this isn't, oh, well, I can't take it if I'm on a drug. No. You need to take it if you're on the drug.
For sure.
You need extra.
So, Oscar, what other supplements would you say are important as part of the core foundational protocol?
Zinc. So another one, kind of like magnesium, most people are deficient in zinc anyway. So just, independent of being on the cancer journey, most people need zinc, and especially being on the cancer journey, because if you're, zinc does like magnesium does many things. But if you're going to boil it down to maybe two things that are especially important in cancer cases is it helps your immune function. So, one of the leading causes of death in cancer is not the cancer, but a lot of people don't die of the cancer, they die of an infection, right? Because the radiation, the surgery, the chemotherapy made their immune system completely crap. So whereas they might have gotten a little cold for a couple of days and bounced back because they had the chemo, radiation, or surgery, they got a cold and died. So zinc is one of the things that helps keep your immune system strong. And this particular version of zinc, I like to say, is pre-chewed. What does that mean? It means that someone else chewed it before you did. A person, no. These are yeast. So they actually feed the zinc to yeast, and they eat it up, and then they shove those in a capsule, and then you eat them, and then they go across the castle bridge and unload their payload, like the Trojan horse, and then behind the castle wall, that is your cells, they're now absorbable zinc, as opposed to just chewing on a metal that causes nausea. So it's pre-chewed, it's easy to absorb, it helps your immune system. So that's, the immune system function is the one thing. The other thing is that, like inflammation, one of the other things that feeds all solid tumors is copper. So angiogenesis is the process by which cancer cells build roadways and highways and bridges to supply their little towns to become cities and big tumors. So if you can prevent those roadways from being constructed, you can prevent those towns from becoming cities. How do those roadways get paved? They get paved with copper. What offsets copper? Remember, everything has a yin and a yang in nature. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. There's night, there's day, there's cold, there's hot, there's fire, there's water, there's zinc, there's copper. So you increase the zinc and you help lower copper, and it becomes harder to pave those roads with the copper to make the roadways for cancer, small tumors to become big tumors. So those are the two things that underscore, why is zinc important, especially in cancer.
You just mentioned something that I want to just ask, and I'm not sure of the answer, and that is the thing about the yeast. Would all zinc supplements always have that, or is that something specific to the types of brands that you've selected?
There's only two on the marketplace that I know of, and Donnie's brand is one of them. And it's actually a pretty good deal. I mean, it's not really any more expensive than the other ones. It's just way better absorbed. I myself have thrown up on zinc supplements before, so I'm fairly sensitive to them. And this is fairly well tolerated, I'd say, more than the other brands of zinc, and it's better absorbed. So no, this is not a standard. This is something that this particular line, Donnie's brand Natura, thought ahead and said, how can we really optimize absorption of a metal? Because your body doesn't just absorb metals. It's like, eating a can opener, right? Your body's going to be like, oh, that's a metal. How am I going to absorb that? So, but if you have someone else break down that can opener, put in a capsule, and then absorb that yeast, because we eat yeast all the time, it's in the environment. We're good at absorbing yeast, and inside the yeast is that zinc. So, this is brilliant thinking. The work has been done for you, basically. We're kind of lucky that someone just dumbed it down for us and just says, okay, if you take these things, it's not going to cover everything, but you got a lot of bases covered here.
For sure. Okay, talk to us a little bit. I know another one of them is around omega, so talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, so once again, we're just, as a population, we're just not eating a whole lot of omega-3s and or 7s. We're eating a whole lot of the bad 6s, which is in, crappy food with canola and soy and corn oil, which is in most everything you eat out. It's cooked in crappy oil. So, fish, chia, hemp, flax, walnuts, these are sources of good, clean omega-3s, assuming that they have not been oxidized or cooked. And we're just not eating that much fish as a population. And EPA and DHA, the kind of active ingredients within fish oil, have been shown to be anti-cancer and antithrombotic and all the good anti-inflammatory. So they're going to cover a lot of bases. Also, there's just some drugs, for example, in prostate cancer that really tend to dry people out. And by dry out, I mean dry skin, dry eyes, mouth dryness, and being lubed up with good quality water and good quality oils like the Complete Omega Essentials really keeps people from drying out. So especially here in Georgia, like in the wintertime, people dry out a whole lot. So it has not just the EPA, DHA from fish, it has the omega-7s to keep your skin nice and lustrous and moist, and it has some GLA in there, which helps balance hormones, and some pine seed oil. It is really a complete oil supplement, not just fish oil.
And anything besides that sets this omega apart from others on the market?
It's really the only one that I know that has all of them. I mean, I don't know of a single other one on the market that has the good threes, the GLA, the good 6, the 7, the 9 from all. I mean, it covers them all. I don't know of another one out there that does.
Okay, cool. Well, that's great to know. Okay, and then the last one I know specifically targets gut health. So let's talk a little bit about that. And this is the last of our core foundational.
Yeah, so probiotic, right? So in the last 10 years, there's been an explosion as to how important our microbiome, which of course has not just been there the last 10 years, it's been there since, we were of coming out of the oceans in tadpole form or whatever you want to, every animal is entirely dependent on their microbiome, and we're just getting the tip of the iceberg here. So for two reasons. One, drugs tend to work better when there's a stable, diverse microbiome. And there's good studies on chemotherapy drugs working better, and sometimes working not at all when there is a complete crappy or non-existent microbiome. By that, I mean the good bacteria in between your mouth and your butt. Of course, you have a microbiome in your eyeballs and your nose and your skin, but the oral probiotics are what we're talking about to help diversify and strengthen resilience of your immune function and increase the efficacy or potential efficacy of some of these drugs. So pretty cool stuff. And this covers a lot of bases. Now, why is this even more important? Because some of these drugs are in the antibiotic class, right? And also, most Americans have taken many rounds in their lifetime of antibiotics, which means that their diversity and resilience of their microbiome already took a hit even before you had cancer. So you probably needed probiotic help irrespective of cancer, but now, especially with cancer, you really need that support.
Okay, great. I think that's so important. And I've been doing a lot of research on gut health recently as well. And what I didn't understand was that what these probiotics do is really help you digest your food differently so that you can get nutrients from anything you eat or drink. So without taking a probiotic, it kind of doesn't make sense to do a lot of other things like buy organic food and do all these things and do all of that. I mean, I guess it always makes sense to buy organic food, let me say that. But the probiotic really gives you the supercharge from anything you're doing outside. So it's really a really valuable tool in your arsenal. Okay, so that completes our core foundational protocol, but we know there's more than that. And that is what's required. That is the minimum valuable supplement strategy that anyone should deploy. But there's a lot more that gives you foundational health. So let's break into some of those, like the greens powder and the mushroom synergy and the vital adapt, et cetera. So Oscar, can you walk us through what we would consider our full foundational protocol?
Yeah, the adaptogens are really key. The core one is kind of assuming that someone is already taking some kind of adaptogen, maybe in their smoothie, as like Schizandra, for example. I take Schizandra powder in the.
Let me time out. What is an adaptogen?
Okay, so I'm sorry. So an adaptogen is an agent that helps you adapt to stress, and that could be environmental stress, like it's hot, it's cold. That could be environmental toxicant stress, like you're inhaling diesel fumes. It could be there's mental emotional stress, you're going through a divorce. It could be any manner of stress. So and they help restore balance to more than one system. So there's a digestive system, there's a musculoskeletal system, there's a nervous system. So by definition, an adaptogen, say like ginseng, schizandra, astragalus, reishi, cordyceps, you've heard of these in, making their way into coffees and soft drinks and cocktails and mocktails and hair care products, you name it. It's all the vogue and rage now to add adaptogens to, your toothpaste or whatever, which, Some of it is just window dressing, some of it is probably legit. But so they're by definition tropho-restorative, which is a fancy word to say that they help bring balance to a system. They cover more than one system at the same time, 2, 3, 4 systems, so respiratory, nervous, digestive, immune, whatever. And they are non-toxic by nature, so it's like you can't really overdose on ginseng or schizandra. I mean, it's possible, but good luck. It's not going to happen. It's like as difficult as overdosing on like squash. So they're nourishing, they're tropho-restorative, they cover more than one system, they are bivalent. Example, what does bivalent mean? It means that it doesn't always push something up or down. Example, blood pressure. Eleuthero, if you have high blood pressure, it lowers it. The same eleuthero, if you have low blood pressure, guess what? It raises it. So it doesn't always push blood pressure up, it doesn't always push it down. It has this intrinsic, it knows which way center is, and it helps it, find that center, whether it's pushing, blood pressure or blood sugar up or down. It tends to help just find that balance. So that is the definition of an adaptogen. And who would not want to have this in their life, cancer patient or not, right? You're going to have more energy, be more resilient to environmental stressors, to social and psychological stressors. You're not quite as tired. Right? Sign me up, right? Now, the additional stress of cancer and or radiation or chemosurgery is going to, on top of just the stress of being in 2024, America, even more. So yeah, these are important. So Vital Adapt and Power Adapt are two nice mixes of liquid adaptogenic compounds that you can put in your coffee, your tea, your smoothie, your water, your cocktail, your mocktail, your mouth directly, whatever. They help kind of bring a lot of these to the table that are specifically have some intelligence around cancer. And there's some cancer research. There's not just random adaptogens. There's ones that specifically have been shown to help healing within the cancer realm.
Okay, can you break those down? So what is the value of Vital Adapt specifically?
Well, I'll tell you what people report. I mean, I can talk about it in terms of, hypoxia-inducible HIF1 and heat shock protein, and like it makes cancer cells more susceptible to heat and oxidation, all these things, but that's kind of heady. The thing that people just report is they're just have way more energy. Like they call it their rocket fuel. So they can make it through the day and make it through their work despite, the side effect of fatigue from radiation, chemo, or surgery, which is normal, but it's not as bad when you have these adaptogens under your belt, right? It's not like caffeine where, yeah, it'll give you energy for a little bit, then you're going to crash and you're going to, wreck your adrenal function and central nervous system.
Okay, so what about Power Adapt?
So the difference between Vital Adapt and Power Adapt is small. They're almost the same formula. The difference is that Power Adapt is a little bit more warming. So it's winter here. I am thin. I don't have a whole lot of, padding on me. So I love Power Adapt in the wintertime. It helps me from getting as cold. And that's one of the big side effects of doing a lot of IV, whatever, vitamin C or chemotherapy. A lot of people are just, freezing their butts off there in the IV, the suites, what do you call them? The infusion suites. So it's basically a little bit more warming. It's a little bit better suited for, a population over 65, especially. It's hard to go wrong with Power Adapt because they generally, have all the sweaters and hats when they're indoors. So, older people get cold easily, but some of us younger people do too. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Okay. What else would be part of our full foundational protocol?
So you've got the greens powder, which just most people are just not eating tons of vegetables and greens. And so we like to add some additional greens into the smoothie or Zoom balls in a very easy, fairly tasty way. So that's Enlivened by Natura or Proline Greens by Nutritional Frontiers. There's certainly some other pretty decent greens powders out there, but those are two companies that I just happen to know personally that I think make a pretty well value added product. Whey protein is another one, which is, this guy.
Hold on, let me ask you a couple quick questions on the greens before we get to Wheys. So what will the greens powder do for you?
The greens powder is just going to help you check off the 5 a day in an easy way, right? So, yes, you should still be eating, the cruciferous vegetables and all those fiber containing foods to help your microbiome. but they have the greens, all the phytochemicals from the greens, and they have some additional nutrients in there to just, make sure that your energy level is good and that your pH is going to be good. So they help bring the pH up a little bit as well.
So that sounds like it would be good for everyone, especially anyone who doesn't eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, which is a lot of the American population.
Which
So
is
I would
most of the
say,
American population.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I didn't want to interrupt you. You were just getting into the whey protein.
Yeah, so the whey protein, and I really don't think of this as a protein supplement. I think of it more of as an immune supplement because yes, there's some whey in there, and yes, it does have some protein in there, but it's mostly something to help your immune system be resilient against foreign invaders. So it has colostrum, which if you or someone else came out of a mother and was breastfed, then you're at least somewhat familiar with colostrum. And a newborn baby has no immune system because it just came out of the womb. It really needs that microbiome to develop its immune system, recognize, friends from foes. But it doesn't have that. So the mom, knowing that this little critter is going to be crawling around everywhere, putting things in its mouth, wants to give it a head start so that it doesn't die from some floor bacteria of a baby crawling around on the floor and putting its hand in its mouth. So the mom gives it this immune boost, if you will, of colostrum. And so that is already in the Beyond Whey. So it's organic grass-fed stuff with a little colostrum, a little extra magnesium. It's anabolic. So one of the things that happens with advanced cancer is that people tend to lose the wrong kind of weight. They're shedding muscle and bone. So it helps you from losing as much of the good stuff because it's anabolic.
Okay, great. What else would you say is part of the full foundational?
Mushroom synergy, I would add, because mushrooms cover a lot of bases. They are all of them. I don't care if it's your portobello mushroom from your grocery store or your reishi or chaga from Mushroom Synergy, but they're all going to support your microbiome. And a healthy and diverse microbiome is going to be one of your best friends to not get the cold, the flu, COVID, or anything from, your favorite people to make out with or be in the same room with, or your kids who are going to, third grade and coming back with all kinds of beasties, right? So when you have a diverse and resilient microbiome, and the mushrooms help make that happen via the beta-D-glucans and many other ways, so they help immune function. And they have a offensive, it's not such defense. They actually help kill off bad guys as well. So it's defense and offense. And there's some really great research, like Robert Rogers, our friend up in Alberta area in Canada, has put together a book of all of the mushroom medicine published clinical trials, and most of these are cancer. So in Japan, I mean, this is a pharmaceutical, in Japan, they inject turkey tail mushrooms into cancer patients and breast cancer patients. I mean, this is a drug from mushrooms. So, we're not making stuff up here. This is pretty legit stuff. And, that's one of many, many mushrooms. So the turkey tail, so that's one of many mushrooms in this formula. So the defense and offense and a safe bet.
Okay, Oscar, mushroom synergy. So one of the things you taught me when I was coming to see you all the time is that not all supplements are the same. And in fact, you can go get a bottle of turkey tail mushrooms or lion's mane's mushrooms from your grocery store or from GNC, but that's different from what you're providing through Mushroom Synergy. So why is it different and why does supplement quality matter here?
Yeah, it's a big deal. There's a lot of companies there's a $6.5 billion industry in the US alone of stuff with mushrooms, capsules, tablets, teas, coffee products. I'm a big fan of mushrooms. We probably have Paul Stamets largely to thank around making this a little bit more mainstream. However, a lot of it is just marketing, lip service, and window dressing. The quality and the quantity of a lot of this crap, of all of this stuff is crap. So the stuff that we recommend is a better quantity and quality. So we'll talk about dosing here in a second, but the quality is such that it's both from fruiting bodies, largely some mycelium as well, and that it's not just rice, and there's actually beta-D-glucan in there, as opposed to a lot of the stuff coming out of China, which is very low in beta-D-glucan. Some, one of many active medicinal compounds which help regulate your microbiome and your gut bacteria and the way that your immune system functions and the T cells and the B cells. So yeah, quality and quantity.
Okay, cool. Okay, what else? I think there's two other things that we have in our full foundational protocol. What would be the other two things, Oscar? I think one's vitamin C. Is that right?
Vitamin C is a much underappreciated, fairly cheap thing that people kind of forgot about. Our friend Russ Jaffe, MD, PhD, is a huge fan of vitamin C ever since hanging out with Linus Pauling for many years back in the day. And it's a great antioxidant. It's a nice way to kind of reset your immune system and your colon by kind of giving yourself a flush every once in a while to kind of just reset things, which is a great idea, especially if you have allergies or if you're doing immunotherapy. It's a good idea to just, just like your car. It's a good idea to just clean the car every once in a while. That way you probably won't have rust as much on your paint. So vitamin C, and this stuff is really strong. So big fan of vitamin C, a lot of bang for your buck for antioxidant potential.
Okay, great. Okay, great. And the last one I think is Cell Guardian.
Cell Guardian is a really nice mix that, was kind of designed largely for breast cancer patients with a lot of the botanicals and nutraceuticals that have in the research shown to be efficacious in both preventing first-time estrogen, especially dependent cancers like breast or uterine or ovarian. But it turns out that a lot of the things that help clear the excess estrogen also help clear, diesel fumes and paint fumes and printer fumes. So, I recommend this for people that don't have ovaries that are just in a high toxicity environment. So Cell Guardian is a nice mix that, especially taken at night, which is kind of when your liver when the liver does most of the detoxing is at night. So I like it at night. It can be taken any time of the day, but it's especially great for an estrogen dominant type of situation or when there's an estrogen receptor positive cancer. But frankly, it's good for just anyone that needs to not just clear estrogen out, but clear out, paint fumes and car exhaust and whatever else they're exposed to
Okay,
in a
great.
safe way.
Okay, so I think you said for out of all of these that we've just talked about, the ones that you would say are the most important, if memory serves, was Botanical Treasures and Inflame Away. Is that right?
Yeah, and again, Inflame Away is sometimes takes a back seat depending on how much inflammation is going on, but it's the most urgent. So if someone has a CRP, let's say of 110, which is supposed to be below 1, but I've measured it with people that are at 110, which is super high. Like that's important and urgent. It's not just important, like the copper level is important, but it's not urgent, right? Like you're not going to bring that copper level up or down in a day or 3, but you can bring that inflammation down from 110 to 10 in 10 days. How do I know? Because I've done it. And how did I do it? Among other things, I used high doses of Inflame Away to the tune of like 17 a day. Yes, I said 17 a day. Now that's a lot, but guess what? It was urgent and important. It was critical and important. So yeah, it was a big deal and it was a big success. Did we do 17 and Inflame Away a day for weeks and weeks and months? No, but we hit it hard right off the bat and we scored.
I think I started at 10 a day and had to, titrate back over a week or two. So I totally appreciate that. Okay, so we just got into an important thing, which I think is dosing. And so you think you can grab your bottle and look at it, and if it says 2 pills, then I take 2 pills and that's the right dose. But I've definitely learned that is not the accurate approach. So let's talk a little bit about dosage.
Yeah, so dosing is an art, the art of medicine and healing is an art. I can give you kind of a general window, but this is why we really want people to work with someone there that can assess their unique situation. But what I can tell you is that the dosing on the bottle ain't what we recommend, okay, pretty much ever. So like this, I'll give you kind of like the standard dose, but I will say with a strong caveat that, you may need more, you may need less. Talk to your healthcare practitioner, talk to your Sherpa, talk to your doctor. Probably not, because they don't know what the hell these herbs are. And it'd be like asking your car mechanic for legal advice, right? Like talk to a lawyer about legal advice and talk to your car mechanic about your carburetor. So DAK, a good starting dose for most people is 2 a day with food whenever. dual mag. There's a whole protocol around how to find your dose. Oscar needs 4 twice a day. If I take 6 at once, I'm running to the bathroom. Some other people run to the bathroom at 2 twice a day. So you just have to figure it out, and it's another conversation. But whatever it is, it's twice a day. Is it 4? Is it 1? I don't know. Whatever gives you loose stool is too much, and you go 1 minus that. Botanical treasures is typically 4 a day. Sometimes during radiation, we'll go, 5 or 6 a day, especially for some people. If they smoke, maybe more because they're oxidizing way more. What else we have? Inflammaway, like I said, it could be anywhere from 1 a day if their inflammation level is 0.3, or if their inflammation level is 110, then oh my God, like 17 a day. A general rule of, if you don't know, then you just do 4 a day, and that's something. And then you check your numbers, you work with a practitioner, and you have them adjust it. But 4 a day is typically kind of where I start people. Beyond Whey, that's a whey protein supplement. 1 a day, don't overblend it. If you're losing too much weight and need to put on pounds and having a hard time eating, maybe 2 or 3 a day, but 1 a day is a safe bet. The greens powder, same thing. 1 scoop a day, throw it in your smoothie, put in your Zoom balls. That's a good start for most people. The complete omega essentials, if it's dry where you are, and or it's you run dry or need or on a medication that dries you out, 6 a day is a good dose. If it's during the summertime and you're getting plenty of good oils, maybe 4 a day is enough for you. So somewhere between 4 and 6 a day with food. Could be all at once, could be whenever, in the freezer so you don't burp them up, but with food is best. Next, who am I missing? The probiotic, typically just 1 a day. And if everything is going really well, sometimes I do 1 twice a week if everything is going really well, and someone is not undergoing, active treatment. What else are we missing here?
Everyone who's listening to this, just so that you know, you didn't have a pen and paper as you're listening, if you're out on the walking or driving
On a hot date.
on a hot date, hopefully listening to our podcast, we will have a download of all of this available as we publish this podcast, and also on our website. So all this information around recommended dosing will be available to you. But Oscar, when you think about this, why can't you just trust the dose that's on the bottle?
Because it's not for you. And also because the supplement companies are forced to do these FDA dances where they are ridiculously conservative about their dose, in case someone has a third of a liver and 1 kidney and 1 nostril and has all of the genetic mutations that make them, mutant. They have to kind of like assume that someone is like a 5-pound baby, and that's the dose that they put on there. So it's clinically speaking, is pretty irrelevant.
Okay, so another question we have is, will you have issues taking any of these with treatment?
So generally speaking, not. There are some of these things that it is theorized maybe make some of the drugs work less effectively, although there is no proof of that. It's just kind of theory. I wouldn't worry about any of it, with the exception, and this is yet to be proven, but just for the sake of not having an argument with the oncologist, the fish oil and venetoclax or BCL2 inhibitors, or let's just say, to keep it simple, fish oil the day of chemo, and platinums also, don't do it. I don't think it's really a problem, but it's not going to matter anyway whether you take it or not. So just to not have that argument, don't take the fish oil the day of chemo. You can take it before, you can take it after, you can double the dose a couple days after if you missed a couple days. It's really not going to hurt you or help you either way. But in case people want to err on the side of extra caution, the fish oil on the day of cancer. Yeah, that's it. All the other ones you can do before, during, and after chemo or radiation or surgery.
Okay. What about with food or without food?
Yeah, generally speaking, the fat with food. So vitamin D, A, and K are all fat soluble vitamins. The fish oil is obviously fat soluble. Generally speaking, fat with food. And then for the water soluble stuff like the B vitamins and the herbs and the vitamin C, whenever, basically, with food, without food, doesn't matter, whatever works for you.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about the supplement quality. We hit on this just a little bit earlier, but I do know that brands matter. And I believe one of the things you've mentioned earlier, if you talked about how some supplement companies will say, yes, we've got nettle in it, but they're actually using the wrong part of the nettle. So can you talk a little bit about how you understand or what some of the criteria would be or how you selected the brands that we've identified for our foundational protocol?
Well, most of these are Natura, which is Donnie's company, which is just a small family-owned company that's not owned by Nestle or Big Pharma, which we're happy to support because they're doing good work in the cancer realm and community, and because they just kind of kept it simple, stupid for us, and they already put all the stuff in there for cancer patients that, like there's great herbs and bottles of herbs and nutraceuticals for colds and flu. Well, great. Natura put one together that has a lot of these same herbs, but the ones that are good for colds and flu, but also are anti-cancer. Well, the whole line is kind of geared already towards cancer patients. So the second reason, besides that it's a great company that we'd like to support, second reason is at the helm is an actual herbalist that's extremely detail-oriented and quality-focused. So Donnie has already vetted a lot of these companies. So he didn't just go and find, a saffron. He found the best one that has the most research, and that's the one that's in Vibrant Mind. He didn't just go find a St. John's wort. He went and found the Sabinsa one from Europe that's the most tested. It is the most pure. It has the most research in it, so quality matters. And yes, the part of the plant. So, it's not just, so turmeric has leaves and shoots and roots and rhizomes, and herbalists know which part of the plant, how it's processed, when it's harvested, when it's planted to have the best efficacious outcomes. So, other companies don't know this. They just, they know the chemistry, but they don't know how to grow a plant. You have gardener friends. It's a special, I'm not even one of them. I don't grow the plants, but I know how to dose them, and I know what part of the plant to use. But most people don't. They just think that, turmeric is all the same thing. Like it doesn't matter what part of the plant or when it's harvested. Sometimes it does. Who would know? An herbalist would know.
Absolutely. So beyond all of this, of course, you need water, you need diet, you need rest, you need exercise, you need to find your flow, you need to maximize joy. All of these things are important. So
They're
all these,
foundational. They're not just important. You can't live very well or very long without flow or water or good air or good rest.
for sure. So what we're saying is all of these supplements are things you need on top of that, but these are the foundational supplements in which we think are really important. I wanted to share with you a little bit of a pro tip, and that is it feels a little daunting when you begin this to have all of these bottles and have to open them up every single day. So one of the things I would do is to actually build out a spreadsheet, or we will be developing a sorting tool sheet for you to understand what supplements you should take when and chart that out across your worksheet. So that's something I would do. I use it. I have it on Excel, but you can do it in whatever format you want so that you understand what supplements you take in the AM before you eat, with food at lunch, in the afternoon or an evening. So that's one of the tools that I would say is go ahead and chart this in a spreadsheet so that you understand what this looks like. And we'll go ahead and start that for your foundational protocol. But we would say to go ahead and get a week-long pill sorter. I actually do mine 2 weeks at a time, so I can do all the sorting of all the pills at one point, and then it's just as simple as grabbing the pill sorter for the day, popping it in your hand, and taking back the pills. A couple different other pro tips to help you as you're trying to swallow pills. Lengthen your neck, don't shorten it. So if you have problems swallowing pills, go ahead and throw them in your mouth. I sometimes have to use the curve of my tongue to get them going down the right direction, swallow them down, but certainly have,
And swirl them around. So if you put them in your mouth and put a tiny bit of water or lemonade or tea or whatever, and then swirl them around your mouth so that the entire pill gets wet and lubricated, they slide right down a whole lot easier.
Awesome. Cool. All things, just go ahead and slide them down. Now, there's a few of these also, Oscar, that you can put in your smoothie in the morning or something like that. So any that you would say specifically you would recommend opening up and potentially putting in a smoothie?
Any of them, you could open them up with the exception of Inflamaway. That will ruin anything instantaneously. The flavor is so disgusting and strong that I would just keep them in the pill. So, theoretically, you could open up the D and K. You probably never noticed that there's vitamin D and K in your smoothie or your Zoom balls or your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or really the Beyond Whey doesn't really have any flavor. And most of these you could open, no problem. Just basically anything but the inflammable way.
Okay. And that's one other point we point out of the Beyond Whey. So as you're thinking about your smoothie, if you dump your supplements in, your protein greens and other things in, you want to make sure that you blend your smoothie almost to the point of being perfectly done, and then put that whey in at the very end because it will chop up and ruin some of the support, and some of the value you're getting from the supplement if you do it too early in the smoothie process. Any other tips or tricks like that, Oscar, you'd mention for our audience?
Zoom balls. I mean, you heard me talk about it a few times. So for people that don't do smoothies or don't want to open them up and put them in your peanut butter and jelly sandwich and just hate taking pills, you could just open these things up, mix them with some peanut butter and honey or almond butter and honey, or I love Georgia pecan butter and honey, and maybe some goji berries and some cinnamon and cardamom, and roll that sucker up into a little Play-Doh ball and stick that in a Tupperware, and that already has the powders in there. And are you going to taste the vitamin D in there? No, you're going to taste peanut butter and honey. And who doesn't love peanut butter and honey? So you put 10 days of Zoom balls in a Tupperware, and that's another way that you can, deal with pill fatigue.
For sure. The important part is I can't tell you enough. I didn't understand how much better I could feel before I had cancer. It literally took me having stage 4 aggressive inoperable chemo-resistant colon cancer to invest in the right supplement so that I could solve the core health issues that made cancer present to begin with. So all of these foundational protocols will increase your vitality. They'll make you feel better over a long time. They'll help you wake up in the morning and have more energy, find your flow, all the good things. And I truly, at this point, cancer-free, feeling great, really could dial back on everything, but I feel so dang good, it's just not worth it. So it's part of my life for here on out. And I can't encourage you all to really break this down and start somewhere, even if you can't afford the full foundational protocol, start somewhere based on what you've learned today and add on as you can afford to do more and more over time. Oscar, anything else you'd share with our audience?
I'd say, like, with some of these things, like, oh, I have some magnesium supplement at home. Well, go ahead and use that first, right? It's great. Like, there's not a so long as it doesn't have any artificial colors or flavors, there's not a bad one out there. It might not be as good as dual mag, which is really well tolerated with your GI and not as likely to cause loose stool. But yeah, go ahead and use your vitamin D first. You use your magnesium first, and then use that up, and then get the stuff that's probably a little bit better, more efficacious, and a better bang for your buck.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for dropping these knowledge bombs on our audience and helping them understand what they can do to rebuild their body and come into this as strong as humanly possible. So we really appreciate that. And for all of our listeners, just do it. Just start. Just choose you. Just invest you. Start with one, add a second, add a third. Over time, it doesn't have to be all 10 to right to begin with, but I will tell you, your life will be better after you put the right fuel in your body to not only fuel your immune system, but to fuel your overall health. So from the bottom of my heart, Oscar, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for dropping these knowledge bombs on our audience. And for all of our listeners, may you live long and lucky. Thanks so much for joining us today for another episode of Mojo Rising.
Peace.